really doesn't have any place here. When you're talking about charter schools, there's really no difference. You know, you have good charter schools, although probably only 17% of them are considered good in comparison to public schools, and about 47% are considered worse. So, you know, you're looking here, we need to be comparing apples and apples rather than apples and oranges. First of all, they have more money. You have about 600, you're talking mainly now, I come from New York. Let me give you some background. I've been a superintendent for 27 years. I've been in education 46 years. I'm a history major, and I think this is the biggest threat to public education that we've ever had. When you start talking about why all these governors are doing the same thing, folks, look at the governor's conferences and what they cover. Just like you pull your administrators or teachers together within a school, the governors and the policy commissions are pretty much following the same line. Were any of you at Denver with Arnie Duncan's group? Well, I was fortunate enough to be asked to attend that. It was very interesting to me because the major thrust of that was getting the unions to do what they should do, which is support charter schools, lower their pension funds, and work with you as a superintendent. And it's amazing to me that we in education are not very militant about this. I mean, this is really a threat to the professionalism of teaching. Now they say, well, the problem in education is that we all have bad teachers. Think about your school or think about where you work. And what percentage of your teachers would you consider bad teachers? Probably not very many. And we get rid of ours before they hit tenure. And why this unionization as the devil is just beyond me. Sure, there are things that I would like to change about the union, but I have a wonderful teaching staff. I have 6,000 kids, I have 500 employees and teachers, and maybe there are one or two that we're pushing towards the door. But I don't have any problem with my union. If I need something from the union, the first person I call is my union head. When she was in Denver with me and the board president, we worked out, we had to come up with something that was a problem, and we said it's technology. I've had one grievance in the last 10 years. I've been 17 years superintendent in Bayshore, New York, and last Saturday night, they just named a road after me in the town, because I'm going to retire and I'm forming a foundation. Okay, what's brought all of this on? It is just beyond me. I firmly believe that public education is the backbone of our country, and you're messing with our democracy, which really gets me angry, when you're messing with public education. And to do this to early childhood, every child, let me tell you about my district. We have about 40% poverty. We have 25% African American, 25% Hispanic. I have some very affluent, but mainly I have some class distinctions there. The problem, or I think the blessing of Bayshore, is that the people who live in Bayshore want to live in a diverse community. They understand that if we're in a global situation, for you to go to an all-black school or an all-white school, and if you break down the figures that Martha just gave you, most of your charter schools are either black and Hispanic or they're affluent white. Now, think about that. Think about when we're talking about racial diversity, and how does that prepare a child to live in a global community? I believe our kids can get along with anybody in the country. We have an IB diploma, we have 22 advanced placement courses. When I went there 17 years ago, we were 200 points below the SAT, the national and state SAT. We're above. We're at or above all the time. We've worked hard, and it does not mean that you have to fight with the union. That was happening before I got there for a variety of reasons, and the budget had not passed. Now people say, why did you ever go there? You know, why would you go to a place where the union was on strike? They called it a sicko. And you take a look at how this kind of mentality gets started, and the press is feeding into that now. The press is telling the politicians that it's the union's fault, or the reason we're going bankrupt in New York State is teacher pensions are too high. Give me a break. Do you not read the Wall Street Journal? Take a look at what's going on. Now, I think that it's going to start to change. I look at, even Christoph is saying now, that we're not paying teachers enough. The reason we're not paying them enough is you're trying to get the upper third of the cohorts, the people who are the brightest in college. If you don't, take a look at the Finland and South Korea and all the places where they're saying that you really have great test scores. China, Shanghai's math score, Singapore. I had a Fulbright to study in China. You know what? Confucius was a teacher. No one has more respect than a teacher when you get into Singapore and China. How much respect are our governors and our newspapers giving to teachers today? This poor man is just going to go into education. When I went into education, it was a reputable profession. Why are we making it into something that the teachers, you know, the only one in the press, and maybe you can give me others, who've really looked at it and talked about it, that teachers should not be the ones that we're casting aspersions on, is Jon Stewart. I mean, how sad is that? At least Katie Couric came around on 60 Minutes a little bit when she was interviewing the person from the charter school. There are some differences in charter schools. The turnover of teachers in charter schools is 50% in 3 years. It's 15% in public schools. Why is that? Why are we having that kind of turnover? And how good is that for kids? Governor Cuomo in New York, bless his little heart, every time I say that, my assistant soup says somebody's going to get fired if she says that. What's going on? He is doubling the amount of charter schools, but now everything is competition. Arnie Duncan, who may be a great basketball player and plays with the president, I hear that he's not quite as good as some other people have said. But when you look at what they're doing, they're making it competitive. Now I'm just looking at Long Island, New York. In making the money that's going to come out from the feds and coming out now from the state, the districts around me that are mainly poor, they don't have the people, the extra people to write grants. How are they going to get that money? It is absurd. The people who are making these decisions have no idea what you have to contend with in your job. Take a look. When I look at the SAT scores, and I'm not against testing, even though in Finland, that everybody holds up as so wonderful, they don't have standardized tests for the kids, and they're 100% union. Now, how can these people be saying that that's what they want us to do with these charter schools? And when you look at the scores, they're all related, even with the SAT, to poverty. You know, if I have kids who are not scoring well on the SAT, it's related. There's a direct correlation. careful about the test. You see, Waiting for Superman, charter schools. Look at these individual tests that they're talking about. Diane Ravitch, which I think she needs sainthood. Do you all know who read Diane Ravitch's materials? I really think she was like Paul on the way to Damascus. You know, she had this conversion, thank God. And I think Christoph and other people like David Brooks are starting to get there. The social animal that David Brooks just is, he says, and I love this, even though he's using the KIPP Academy, reminding me to come back to their results, he's saying that reason is not the only thing that we're doing in education. Hello. Any of you have taught know that intelligence and knowledge is only a part of what we do as teachers. He's saying now that you can go into a high school, and if you say to a child, who's your favorite teacher? If the child answers you, he'll graduate from high school. If he doesn't and looks at you like you're crazy, why would I have a favorite teacher? He's not going to graduate from high school. We know that. We know that good teachers fulfill a lot of avenues in a child's life. You have to have the content, but you also have to have the character skill, but you have to have the care. And that's how we, as a society, progress. When you're starting to make public schools compete, and I love this, where people will say, oh, well, you're too easy, you're going to need to be harder and fire those teachers and whatever. And I'm saying, why would I do that? Don't you want a teacher in a classroom to provide an inspiring, nurturing environment? And do you do this, as they did in Rhode Island, by just firing all the teachers? Your kids don't score well? Too bad. You're fired. Please. What are we about? What are we doing to public education? My fear is we're going to go too far down that road and we're not going to be able to save public education. That is my biggest fear. And it is very close. Look at all these, when they start throwing out these test scores, 80% of our 8th graders can't read up to expectations on the date. It's 25%. Go back and look at all these things they're quoting. They're not right. You have to go to the original resources. You know, when they say taken from such and such. The NAACP, every civil rights group has come out against the race to the top. And it's saving black kids. Vouchers didn't save black kids in Milwaukee. They have had vouchers for how many years? At least 10.
20. 1991.
Yeah. And how do the black kids do in the charter schools or with the vouchers versus the public? Way worse. Twice as many failures. Now think about that. And yet you have all these politicians, all these people telling you your salvation for public education is do away with unions and have charter schools. Hopefully, we all know that we can't do that. But how militant are we? You know, other than Wisconsin, you know, we just sort of sit back and think, well, that my early childhood programs are safe. Every one of them. We will have early childhood education in my district for every child. We're not going to cut that. We're not going to cut programs. Any cutting of staffing we've done by attrition. And you know what? The teachers respect that. And they work with me